Hello, everyone. Welcome to Revelation Now podcast. Your host, Jeff Wilson, and our other hosts with us, Tyler Trent.
Hello.
Hello. And Jason.
Hello. Wilson.
In this episode session, we're going to be talking about in the sky phenomena, aka Chariots of Fire, which, by the way, are recorded many times in the scriptures, sky phenomena. I mean, it's just from Genesis to Revelation. In our modern culture, they refer to it as UFOs, unidentified flying objects and so forth, in that. But what many might not know is that it's not something new per se, but goes back as far as human history can be traced. As far back as our records go, our ancient records, there's accounts of phenomena in our sky and space above us. In all ancient cultures, the gods, they're not just the gods on earth, but they've come from the sky in some way. And we're not going to get into the religious aspect of it here in ancient cultures, all the beliefs there, but just a few examples we'll look at. But we're looking again, our theme is in connection with end times. Why is there now all the more belief in the paranormal, the supernatural, that we've not all become atheists who believe just there's no God, there's no angels, there's no anything because we figured it all out. That's not the case. It's the opposite. More and more are these communities believing and reaching out for answers. What was that in X-Files? The truth is out there. Is that right?
That's it.
That search. And we do believe, in our case as Christians, that there is absolute room for belief in the supernatural and, the otherworldly, the extraterrestrial, and how that connects to the end times. Here's an example in India, the Vedas. It's a large body of religious texts in ancient India. It goes back, thousands of years, 4,000, 6,000. They really don't know, but It's actually written texts. And in it, they have recorded Star Wars. Wars in the heavens.
George Lucas stole that?
Yes. Like the gods, but they're not gods. They're gods, I guess. Mm-hmm. But they're fighting in the.
Is it like their creation story?
Yeah,
or?
and they not just their creation story. It's part of it, I guess. But they have they're in vehicles though. This is thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. Chariots, we would call them chariots. They're called what are they called? Vimana. There's actual word for it. Like we would say spaceship. Mm-hmm. Now this is before airplanes, let alone spaceships. This is way before any ideas of that, but they have recorded in their texts that and we will call it mythology, but nowhere do the ancient cultures ever call it mythology. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm not saying it was all true.
Sure, it's what they believed.
Yeah, but I think somebody saw something is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. There was something going on. Even in Genesis 6, we have the sons of God, the angels that come down, and the giants and the Nephilim and all of that. But that's in a lot of cultures. But my point is today what we're looking at is the sky phenomena. It's just there, and it's in the scriptures. And how we believe in the end times, that's going to become even more so, right? So you've got sky phenomena, Greek, ancient history, Egyptian, Norse, Roman, Hindu, Aztec, Celtic, Japanese, Mayan, Chinese, Babylonian. It's all there, just stuff happening in the sky. Jesus, though, remember when we did our Revelation series, which was what? last week. We just did.
Summer.
It sounds like it was all a long time ago. Remember
was.
when we did that Revelation series a long
hit it all
time
summer.
ago? I love it. I think that was just a great timing for that, for me personally too, and for the church, because Jesus talked about, in the sky. We went into that, in your atmosphere. I'm coming. Yeah. I'm showing up. Something's going to happen. And it's there. But here's the deal. Ancient aliens. Y'all heard of Ancient Aliens? In 1968. So you got all this stuff with the gods and in the skies, and so a fellow by the name of Eric von Daniken. In 1968, he was a young man. He comes along and he has a revelation that all these sky gods were not, of course, actual gods, but literal advanced aliens from other planets visiting Earth from way back when and interfering, having an effect on Earthlings' ancient culture. And that's where it came along. And, man, have you ever seen him? Clips of him talking and stuff?
Which guy?
Eric von Daniken. He's the godfather of ancient alien theory. He wrote Chariots of Gods, the book. It was huge. Millions, still selling millions.
When did that come out?
1968.
Okay.
That started the revolution. People don't know all this UFO, ancient alien stuff goes all the way back. That was the big key.
There's also a documentary on that. That was huge, too.
Yeah, him.
Called that.
Yeah.
No, Chariots of Gods.
Oh, Chariots of the Gods. Yeah, that's a good one. Have you seen that?
Yeah. That was a catalyst for that movement as well.
Yeah. I love the music in it.
Yeah.
It's that classic 70s stuff. It is so good with it. He's still alive. But yeah, again, all the mythology, he says, it's more literal than realize. It's not, see, to him, it's not angels, it's not demons. Same with Giorgio, who's popular on Ancient Aliens.
Yeah, I read an article this past week. It was in Big Think. It's from June. Anyways, the title of it was on this. It's on the show Ancient Aliens. The show itself is a phenomenon.
Yeah,
like, why in the world is this popular?
Why do people care?
And the title of it's called Ancient Aliens is Fantasy Fiction for Atheists.
Interesting.
And so there's part of this phenomenon in our culture where our culture is going more and more secular, in a sense.
Yeah.
Where we really, this subject overlaps in ways that are, I don't think it's always black and white. Where it's helpful and where it's dangerous, it's not always clear. Okay, because basically there's like a it's like a back door into mysticism through the view of what you're just talking about with Chariots of the Gods, as far as its actual beings showing up, not just gods and spirits, but actual beings. So people started being able to believe that instead of just gods and spirits and angels and demons. Maybe it's an alien. Maybe it's another being. And so it's really, if you've seen that show, it's all what they call naturalism. So it takes all of the ancient stories, and it's never gods. All the gods are actually other entities, right? Yeah. Okay, so it's either advanced civilizations from the future coming back, or from space, or there were
way beyond us.
Advanced civilizations just in the past that became extinct. Whatever it is, they're not gods, though. As long as you take that off,
sure,
we can accept that, because that's ridiculous. Who would believe in such a thing?
Yeah.
So it's let people still want that. Plus there's just things on the planet and in existence that are not explained. There is phenomenon happening like crazy that people are like, what the heck is this? Yeah. And so, but they're also biased toward religion. Yeah. There's just a bias in our culture toward religion for some people. And the flip side of it, so for the people biased toward religion, you can take it as aliens. It's other beings. It's other the multiverse. I was just talking with you about this. Every Marvel movie is now multiverse. We can accept that. We can accept multiverse. A spirit world, that's silly. But a multiverse, I can accept that. Okay?
Right.
But what I've found in my life is that this was a gateway for me to finding my own faith. The same thing.
So you think it could be a conduit, actually?
Yes, exactly.
Nice.
It can go both ways. You can either demystify it, and it's not helpful because you're taking out the spiritual and moral ramifications of it, or for somebody like me who you can become so jaded in your religious upbringing. You've heard these stories a million times. They seem like just silly
Kid stories.
kid story
fairy tales.
myths, exactly. And then you say, wait a second, what if it was an actual thing? What would it look like? What would, you know what I mean? Like
And are
what
these
if
ancient biblical writers describing this the best they know how?
Yeah, what if a chariot in the sky is a vehicle? So for me, it became helpful.
That's cool.
To make it, to put flesh and bones on it a little bit, you know, in an extreme way, you know, like for a lot of those things, when I think about the ancient texts and the miraculous, like what did that look like? Could it be, you know, something real, not just, you know, cloudy in the sky thing.
Yeah.
So it could be helpful, or it could
A red cloud.
could not be helpful, but it's huge. The phenomenon
I like that.
has opened up, and we've also been talking about where it could be. I'm saying it can be really helpful because it gives people an entrance point of just experience in existence of saying, look, what is this stuff?
Yeah. Could
There
this
is
point to this?
because
maybe?
even we just had the presidential debates last night. They brought it up in the debates. They asked them,
Really?
if
I
you're
didn't
going to
see
be
that.
president, will you disclose what you know about UFOs?
Will you invite the aliens to the White House?
Right? And everyone laughs, uncomfortable, because it's still
But why
kind
would
of
you
a
even bring
faux
it
pas,
up? Yeah.
but it's becoming too much. Like the fact that it's just main stage now, like literally on the presidential
Literally,
stage. Like, what are you going to do with this? Because it's not going away, you know? It's interesting. So I think personally it can be really helpful to look at it in a naturalistic way. Like what is that? Is the spirit world, you know, just multiverse? Is it
Yeah.
another dimension? That could be helpful, or it could not be helpful. Depends on how you go with it. Or it could be open you up to deception.
Yeah.
You know?
Or like you're saying too, it could lead you to faith.
Yes, exactly.
It could be
It actually
part of a
encouraged-
journey.
I don't think it's just totally black and white.
Yeah.
It actually strengthened mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally
this
get
stuff.
the deception side of it.
Yep.
Like, what do you do with Genesis 28? Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. He reached a certain place where he decided to camp because the sun had gone down. He took one of the stones and placed it near his head. Then he fell asleep in that place and had a dream. He saw a stairway erected on the earth with its top reaching to the heavens. The angels of God were going up and coming down it, and the Lord stood at its top. He said, the Lord, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham. And he goes on and gives him a message. Then it says, then Jacob woke up and thought, it's just a dream. No, it's not what it says.
Right.
I just ate some bad food and had a crazy dream. No, he
Bad
says,
dates.
surely the Lord is in this place.
Yeah.
What, is it a portal or something?
Yeah.
You know? But I did not realize it. And he was afraid and said, what an awesome place this is. This is nothing else than the house of God. This is the gateway of heaven.
Yeah. The CEV says,
What do you do with
Jacob,
that?
when Jacob woke up suddenly, he said, the Lord is in this place and I didn't know it. And he became frightened. He said, what a frightening place. It is the house of God, a gateway to the heaven.
And I would say correct.
Yeah.
Correct answer, my friend.
Yeah.
What do you
Right.
do with that term gateway?
Yeah. Gateway.
The fact that it's
gateway,
an
it
overwhelmingly, you know,
There's
it's
he was saying there's some sort of
awe,
entrance. Yeah.
wonder, frightened, like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had some kind of literal experience. And of course, you could explain that away in many ways.
Yeah.
He had a
you could
dream.
find that.
What, dude? You had a bad dream.
Yeah.
No big deal.
He didn't think so.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, too, that the way he marked it, it became like a place. Literally, I think that's a whole other subject, is literally physical spaces.
Yeah.
He thought that space, that ground, that arid physical geography was a gateway. Bethel.
Yeah, a connection
It was a connection point.
between the other side.
And you see those all around the world. There are specific places where people have deemed there's something on this ground specifically is a portal of
Yeah.
some sort. Whether it's Stonehenge or the
Oh,
pyramids.
that's true.
Or
Yeah.
all of these
the
different,
monolith.
all the mounds.
2000
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, human beings have been saying this forever. There are certain hauntings, whatever you want to call it. There are certain specific places and things where people will say, no, there's something here.
True. I know
That is on this.
Brother Hagin, Kenneth Hagin Ministries, he was the president of the Bible school I went to. Just from what you're saying there, from a Christian point of view, sometimes it's a matter of terms. He talked about how he could, because he was traveled all over America and spoke and ministered, but he said he would come into certain places and would know that there was ganging up of demonic entities in this place, in this city. You know, it's more so than you could sense, and he could sense what kind of spirits were there influencing, you know. That's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Like they're not hanging out over in Timbuktu or out in the country somewhere, but
Yeah.
like certain locations, like you're saying.
That's what I'm talking about, location. Even Michael Heiser really got into that in
Unseen Realm.
Unseen Realm, and he talks about, it's really so good. It's fascinating. Bashan, specifically, there's two references where Jesus talks about Peter, when he's talking to Peter, and he says, I'll
this rock.
make my church
Yeah.
on this rock.
On
He's
this-
talking about
It's a literal on
a
this mountain.
literal location, and the location was believed to be the gates of hell. It was the entrance to hell, that specific place. So it wasn't, I mean, there's different ways of interpreting that, clearly, but instead of Peter, I'm making it on the rock of Peter. No, I'm making my church on the gates of hell right here. Like he was calling out the other world,
in your
telling them,
face.
I'm
Yeah.
doing it here, you know?
And that kind of thin veil between the natural and the supernatural, the
Yeah.
physical
Yeah.
and the non-material.
Yeah.
I read this in an article. It was pretty cool. Emily McFarland Miller, she's covered a wide range of religious issues for the Religion News Service. She says, I can't be the only elder millennial who remembers reading children's books about the strange and unexplained, or watching episodes of The X-Files that mix stories of levitating saints with hauntings and UFO sightings and people blowing up toasters with their minds. I feel like that cemented the idea for me as a kid that there's a pretty fine line between the spiritual and the supernatural. I thought that was
good.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
What does she mean, the spiritual? What would the difference be?
I think she's just talking about, she's being asked in this article specifically about someone who writes about religion. Like, what does that look like when you see these things coming up in life and what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Like the X-Files and these ancient aliens,
Phenomenons,
all
yeah.
this phenomenon. How do you reconcile that with your faith, with how you write as a news writer?
Yeah.
And she's saying, well, this just seems to be in my cosmic existence since a kid. This has just always been there.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's like she's saying, trying to find that. To me, it's almost like a portal in a sense, where you're just kind of like this little thin thing you can step through, where this and this kind of overlap. And I think that's even as we pray as
Yeah.
Christians.
Yeah,
We
that's
pray
good.
for heaven and earth to overlap, like wherever we go.
Yeah.
Like we're
The
we're those
overlapping.
portals of heaven, they say in the Bible Project.
I mean, if the scriptures are true, it's there.
Right.
It's as close as us here. What about the
I just thought about that article because we talked about with Jacob. That was so cool about the actual physical placing the rock there.
Yeah.
Made me think almost like, okay, just in case I need to remember how to get to that portal to heaven. There's that rock. Here's
it
the rock.
was a special place.
Yeah.
It was literally a spot that was sacred,
Yeah.
like sacred ground.
Yeah, that got set apart, but
Yeah.
in the real world, in
Yeah.
real physical space and time. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
What about those that have seen aerial phenomena? Maybe you have stories that
Claim.
you've come across?
Well, I saw this and even looked up how to pronounce it. Leicestershire, England. Hopefully that's right. It says it's no stranger to UFO sightings, with UFOs identified, revealing the city of Leicester had the most unexplainable objects in the sky since April 2021. They've had confirmed 3 sightings right there in England. And it says the strangest of the trio was made most recently in August of this last year, when an unexplainable bright object was spotted above the city hovering. Here, the UFO Identified said that the object, that's the organization UFO Identified, said that the object, described as oval in shape, seemed to be still in the sky, getting bigger and bigger and bigger before disappearing suddenly.
2022?
Yeah.
That's that's not Ancient Aliens.
2022 in England. I guess it's supposedly this hot spot
That's
city.
now aliens.
This hot spot city that people will like travel to, like like with what was that movie Twister, the storm hunters,
Yeah.
tornado hunters. Like people travel here
To that place.
to that place,
Specific
to that city,
place.
like
that
because they
keeps
see-
having
yeah, because they
phenomena.
claim 3 just since 2021.
Yeah.
But I love that idea. I think that's what you're talking about, Jeff, with this bright thing in the sky, and it just seems to be getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then
Yeah, and
just gone.
did that just start? What I'm saying is, they're saying literally, right?
They're saying they saw something.
Literally
like,
saw. That's why they've changed. They changed it. I was looking at it. Like, you notice when just recently when the government had the meetings on it,
Yeah.
they would say UAP.
Yeah.
They've changed the terminology to.
Is it to make it more palatable?
I don't know. It started off. They meant unidentified aerial phenomena, and now it's officially. They even have an official definition. What the government says. Here's what we mean by UAP: unidentified anomalous phenomena. And I'm like, what's that mean? Anomalous. Here's what anomalous means: odd, unusual, irregular, divergent.
Yeah, and that's what I think this is, because something doesn't get
Unidentified.
in Leicester.
divergent
Something doesn't
phenomenon.
get closer and closer and closer, and then just disappear.
Yeah, we know
it's the
there's
reverse, right?
Like we know there's things that happen in the sky. That's normal, natural things, whether it's a plane or a comet going by or shooting stars and stuff. But there's this other deal, the UAP. The anomalous is what we're talking about. Like, could that be? What is that? Like in Ephesians 6, where it talks about spirits in the heavenlies, and like,
And I think-
could that have been something that showed up? Like he's saying, like, what did it do, Tyler?
It was getting bigger and bigger and bigger before disappearing suddenly.
And what did they believe it is?
They believe it's a UFO, and it made me think of one of the
Like intelligence.
one of the
behind
most famous Chariots of Fire
Uh-huh.
portions of scriptures with Elijah.
it. Oh yeah, you got that verse.
And it says that Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven. There appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire, and it separated the 2 of them, Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind to heaven, and Elisha was seeing this as he was crying out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And then he saw Elijah no more.
And that's a whole other subject. Man, that's cool.
That just seems
they
like
believed there was a whole.
This
No
thing in the
more.
sky, then all of a sudden,
Gone.
no more.
They believed they had a whole supernatural army on their side that fought for. Like when they fought, this goes way back to even the Vikings. All of them saw it when they were fighting on Earth in ancient times. The 2 different groups above them, were 2 supernatural groups were fighting. You see that with David and Goliath.
You even see it in
They both
Lord
cursed.
of the Rings.
They both cursed each other by their gods when they came up. By my God, I'm going to do it. And then he said, no, by Jehovah, I'm taking your head off. And
Mm-hmm.
back and forth with that.
Yeah.
Is it real? are they just mythology?
this is
That's
what
what
it-
we're talking about.
This is part of where I think this subject matter kind of overlaps. You know, this is a really good instance of that. Like,
Yeah.
as a Christian, what am I supposed to do with that
Yeah.
Correct.
story?
We need to be aware
Because
of
there's
it.
a part of our culture that just laughs and mocks all of it.
Mhm.
Like when they brought it up in the presidential thing, everybody laughed.
Mm-hmm.
But they're bringing it up.
But they're
It's
still
like,
bringing it up.
It's
yeah.
like an awkward laughter now. It was just totally tinfoil hat laughter. And now it's kind of
good.
like, this it's not real, right? Right? This is silly, right, guys?
yeah.
You know. But as a Christian, what am I supposed to do with that story? How does that
Sure.
affect me? Is it horses that are on fire, literally? Is
yeah.
it?
Is this
Yeah.
the best way
Is
they can
he
explain
talking
it?
like this is where the ancient aliens perspective is a little helpful, where they take the ancient stories and say, no, it was really this. Like they something like Graham Hancock, whose big thing is about an ancient apocalypse, where they have all these ancient societies talk about a dragon in the sky,
Yeah.
and he says they're talking about comets.
Yeah.
Comet in the sky that has a tail, you know, a light tail or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's what he's like with Elisha. Is he talking about a literal horse, or is he talking about some kind of vehicle that picked him up? And that's how he explained it, you
Yeah.
know?
Mm-hmm.
A naturalistic view can kind of put flesh and bones a little bit on that. I think that could be helpful.
Make it less fantasy.
Yeah.
And more believable.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when you talk about what you believe and how to reconcile these stories with faith and what the Bible looks like in comparison, I mean, even with Jesus, who's, you know, at the center of our faith,
Uh-huh.
Luke ends his gospel saying, and it happened that while he was blessing them, he parted from them and was carried up into heaven.
Wow.
I mean, that's just,
What do you do with that?
Right.
right?
Yeah. And I think as a Christian, what we're saying here, it's just being alive spiritually and awake in these times we're living.
Yeah.
It's you're just going to have to face it, that these things are just becoming predominant in our times. And to know that I think we're on the right side of it, and just being followers of Jesus and
what
His Word and His truth and the Holy Spirit guiding us in these days, because man, there's some crazy stuff asking, you know, hey, our next president, now please disclose if we've made contact with aliens. I mean, what if they did? Then what are you going to do,
Well,
as Christians?
and we're
Hey, we've made contact.
Yeah, and
We
we're
talk
keeping
about
our,
world changer, game changer.
we're keeping our eyes open, because right around the corner, the end of Luke is just part 2 of the Acts of the Apostles, where he says that he's going to return the exact same way.
Yeah, in the sky.
So, yeah.
And then you've got
Paying attention.
Exodus 13. Here's another. Now the Lord was going before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them in the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel day or night. That's phenomena.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And I love it. Doesn't your mom, Pastor Katrina, say that it was always fire? You just can't see it during the day?
I don't know.
I think that's her
that's his
take.
thought of it.
Is that right,
Yeah.
Jason? I've heard her say that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't. It's at nighttime you really can see it. So you've got
Yeah.
this fiery.
There's just some great verses
Presence.
along this line. The UAP, Deuteronomy 33. There is none like the God of Jeshurun, who rides the heavens to your help, and through the skies in His majesty.
Love that.
2 Samuel 22 and 11. And he rode on a cherub and flew, talking about God. And he appeared on the wings of the wind. Psalm 118 and 10. He rode upon a cherub and flew. Same idea. And he sped upon the wings of the wind. Psalm 68 and 4. Sing to God, sing praises to His name. Lift up a song for Him who rides through the deserts, whose name is the Lord, and exalt before Him. And rides through the desert meant up above them. This idea here. So what a phenomena. It's in the scriptures. That's what, I guess, what I'm trying to get across in this podcast we're talking about, is that there is the supernatural, and we have a connection to it, just even through angelic help that we can believe in Psalm 91, and the help of the angels over His people and over His children. I mean, Israel definitely believed it, right? that you were reading there. He called, what was that, Tyler, again, that you read there? What did he call it, Elisha?
He called it appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire. And Elijah went up in it by a whirlwind to heaven.
And then he said, what was that going?
And then Elisha was singing this, and he was crying out, my father, the chariots of Israel and its horsemen. And he saw Elijah no more.
What does he mean, chariots of Israel?
I think he was what you were saying.
Supernatural?
Contextually, I think the army
That's what I'm thinking.
idea of he was being rescued. He was being taken.
Earlier in
Now,
the story,
that's
there's
so
a whole part where he says he sees it, where they're scared. There's this other army.
Oh, the other
shows
part
up,
where they're
and he
around
says,
the
"Oh,
mountain."
I'm not scared
we're
now. 'cause
surrounded.
now I
Open
can
the
see."
young man's eyes so
Yeah.
he can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Michael
that's
W.
what-
Smith song.
That's what I was getting excited about. So today, as Christians, do we have that same help? Or was it just Israel who had God's help?
Well, I think there's
Ooh, that's exciting.
that's really the interesting line for religious people, for the church is
Yeah, that's what I mean.
because we were talking about this earlier. There's a part of Christianity that even as Christians don't take it seriously, and not just don't take it seriously, but don't even know, like it's all ridiculous.
Yeah,
But then it gets confusing because you're a person of faith.
right.
It's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Is none of it real? Is it all bad? Is it all silly?
Yeah.
You know? Like, so where does that leave us with Jesus? You know? Did he really show up? Did he really?
Yeah, because that's as supernatural
Yeah,
as
that
can be.
seems pretty super.
Yeah.
And that was really part of what Heiser got into, Michael Heiser, when he started writing his books, was he was frustrated because a lot of Christians would have on one side certain supernatural beliefs that they were okay with, and then a whole other set that they just would not engage with. That was just like from the same book.
Yeah.
They're just picking and choosing which phenomenon they'll be okay with.
Right.
You know?
And I think too, why we're even doing the podcast is, I think what we want to bring to the forefront is just not to not let all these other things just control the narrative.
Right.
You know,
I got to thinking too.
they don't. I mean, we have a voice too in what's happening here.
Yeah, and like I said, we're looking.
Yeah, I like.
We're aware.
Yeah, Jason, what you're saying there, it's really good. How it helped, it inspired you
Yeah, I think there's a
for believing more so.
because this has gotten
Christian-wise.
so popular. A lot of Christian ministers and things have addressed it, and a lot of them are just saying no, it's evil.
Yeah,
It's just straight up demonic, evil stuff, all of it.
but I think it's partly that, but not all of it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, where I think there is a little bit of a gray area where, for me, it brought it to life. The naturalistic view of saying, wait,
For me too.
some of this
For me too.
phenomenon
For me too. Yeah.
makes sense to me. It brings the scriptures alive to me instead of
That's
not.
good.
Yeah.
You
Did you
know.
read Psalm 68 earlier? Is that one of them?
Oh, 4, sing to God, sing praises.
68:33 made me think of we sang it a couple times, the old Michael Gungor song. Do you remember that?
Mhm.
To him who rides upon the highest heavens, which are from ancient times, behold, he gives forth his voice, a voice that is strong. He rides upon the highest heavens. In ancient skies for the song.
Oh, I love
He
that.
rides in ancient
Yeah.
skies. Yeah.
You made me want to get that out and listen to it.
Oh, so good.
That was great. That
But
was
that's the
such a
same
good album.
idea. He rides upon the highest heavens.
Yeah, there it is.
What's he riding on?
Yeah.
Right. Here's a quote from the famous guy. I'm not saying it's aliens, but it's aliens.
Yeah, Giorgio.
Giorgio.
Tsoukalos.
How do you say his last name?
Tsoukalos, I believe.
Tsoukalos. Okay.
Yeah.
So he says,
I think this T's silent, but anyway.
whatever was described in the Old Testament,
Tsoukalos. Sorry.
whatever was described in the Old Testament wasn't God. It was misunderstood, flesh and blood, extraterrestrials whom our ancestors misunderstood as being divine and supernatural. Why? Because of the misunderstanding of technology, and that is the underlying thread that applies to all the ancient astronaut theory. Okay, so part of that is, you would say, okay, that's totally
I can
off.
see why you'd be totally put off as a Christian by that.
To me, partially, it excites me.
I know.
Because of what he just said.
If Christians can understand what he's saying.
He just said it.
He's
he
saying
just
it's
said,
real.
No, it's flesh and blood, real thing showed up. For me, I'm saying, it's right. Where with Christians, well, if they can keep it mystic, it never gets real.
It never gets real.
And it stays in a Sunday school mystic thing where I'm saying, actually, he's helping me believe more by fleshing it out a little, putting flesh.
Spirit is matter. It's just a higher form. And the angels, like if they show up, they're concrete. You know, like we think of them as just myths. Yeah. Like they can walk through walls because they're so ethereal and they're kind of not real. They just float through walls. It's the opposite. Their substance,
charging through walls.
Their substance is stronger than the wall. It's the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. So when they do manifest, God permits the manifestation of these things over in our realm. They're concrete. They're physical.
I just think that's ironic.
You could physically shake hands.
Inadvertently,
that is good.
He's demystifying it and bringing the mystic to life.
So he's agreeing something happened.
Something happened. At least he's saying that.
And in some sense, that dude is super faith-filled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He believes a real thing.
It used to be it's just myth.
Well, that has been the issue.
That's what I liked about
even
ancient
Graham
aliens.
Hancock. He runs he's like an outcast for archaeologists because he says archaeologists take none of the myths seriously. They just keep saying it's all silly nonsense. And he's saying, no, there's real information. And he's not a Christian by any means, but at least he's saying, don't be so naive and prideful to think you're so much more advanced that there's nothing to learn here from these myths.
Right.
Because even if you deconstruct them in a way, at least they're taking them seriously, I would say. So.
John 1, we'll close out here. That was just good, guys. It's exciting. Of course, we're also doing this to strengthen our faith. Our God is real. His word is true. And it'll end with Jesus, and then Ephesians. In John 1, excuse me, Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom is no deceit. Jesus answered and said to him, because I said to you, and I skipped down, but Nathanael says, you know me? Because he saw him under a fig tree. He had the gift of the Spirit operating. Then Jesus says to him again, I saw you under the fig tree, and you believe because of the gift of the Spirit. He said, the Messiah, the Lord. And then he says to Nathanael, Jesus is talking, you will see greater things than these. And he said to him, most assuredly I say to you hereafter, you shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man. Mm-hmm. Well, what do you do with that?
What does that even mean?
What do you do with that?
Jason, you just talked about earlier.
That's Bethel.
That's what he's referencing.
Heaven open.
Jacob's ladder?
He's right. Absolutely.
Ladder. What are they doing?
He's saying he's that rock. Remember how you said, Jacob said, I'm going to put this rock here.
Yeah.
Well, now you have that rock.
He's
in the
flesh
connection. And blood.
He's the connection.
This is that place that's happening is in him.
And I also believe whenever Jesus refers to Son of Man, they knew exactly he was talking about Daniel 7, about the Son of Man in their King in glory, ruling over earth. They knew what he was, but Jesus did it in the third person. It's so clever how he was talking that way.
How did he reference it there? What does he say?
You shall see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man.
So the Son of Man, the reference to
Daniel 7, where he comes
a literal king.
Yeah, remember the end of Star Wars? We talked about where they're in that big celebration and the awards and all these things.
A real human being.
Right.
That's why it's Son of Man.
Yeah.
It's a glory. He's saying you're going to see the glory of the Messiah and angels and...
Literally.
Yes.
That's the Son of Man part.
Yes.
Is the flesh and blood kind of like Ancient Aliens guys saying.
Yeah. Well, yes, there were many different views.
He's talking about the Son of Man in the sky literally coming and
flesh and blood.
ancient. Yeah. but he's connecting the beings, the extraterrestrials with it, the angels of God. And then, of course, Ephesians 6, guys, as we go, we want you to be encouraged out there in the faith. Ephesians 6, starting in verse 10, finally, brothers and sisters, be strengthened in the Lord, in the power of his might, in the strength of his might. Clothe yourselves with the full armor of God, so that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the powers, against the world rulers of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavens. For this reason, take up the full armor of God, so that you may be able to stand your ground in the evil day. And having done everything to stand, you can stand, having on the belt of truth, having on the breastplate of righteousness, your feet shod with the good news of peace, taking up the shield of faith, which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, by which in every prayer and petition pray at all times in the Spirit. And to this end, here we go, be alert with all perseverance in Jesus' name. Thanks for tuning in. And that was good. We'll see you again. You'll hear us again next time. Live Now Podcast.